Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us today will be beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. First, a few of my thoughts to get us going. We are ranked number 4 heading into this week's action, but we know rankings really don't mean much anymore. The only one that matters is the CFP poll, which wisely does not come into play until October. All we need to do is take it one game at a time, get better, and win. The rest will take care of itself. That journey moves to a different level this week. Big Ten play starts. Maryland comes to town with a perfect record. Last year's Maryland team sent 2 receivers and a running back to the NFL. Scouts from the league are saying this team has 4 NFL caliber receivers, 1 running back, and their quarterback. This offense is very good, and it's going to be interesting to see how our defense plays against them. They will put some points on the board against us and challenge us, which is really just what we need. I watched the Terps last Saturday against SMU. Their defense has improved, but SMU ran the ball down their throats. So don't be surprised if we start out with the same game plan, which, if successful, is going to open up the passing lanes for JJ. Again, we need a challenge. Let's see how we react if Maryland is competitive. My guest today says we will know much more about this Michigan team after Saturday's game. With us next is beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. So don't go away. Joining us on our Game Day segment this week is Michigan beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive. Great to have you back with us, Aaron.
Mike, it's good to be back.
Well, we are so glad, I know you and I and the Michigan fan base, to get Big Ten season underway, even though Michigan is perfect after 3 games. I think we can all agree, whether we cover the team or whether we're season ticket holders, that after 3 games, it's really, really hard to know just exactly what kind of team Michigan is.
No, you're absolutely right. They put up a lot of points. They're near the top of the chart statistically in a lot of categories nationwide and in the Big Ten and everything else. But yeah, you got to consider the competition that they've played so far. It's been, bottom of the barrel in terms of the FBS. It's been relatively easy. They look very good, but yeah, you don't know how that's going to hold up against, better competition in the Big Ten. So I guess we'll see. It was obviously a good start for them. A lot's going right, a lot for them to hang their head on. But certainly, competition's about to ratchet up here.
Well, Jim touched on the team injury situation at Monday's presser and mentioned that Cade would be out for a few weeks. He was very, very vague, and that's how Jim is with injuries. But it does sound like it was some type of a foot injury, doesn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, it looked like an ankle or foot or something. He got rolled up on that throw to Ronnie Bell there late in the first half on Saturday. Took a hit after he threw the ball. I just landed awkwardly. It was one of those freak incidents that could happen on any given play. He came off limping and never came back after the halftime, so it was assumed that he was dealing with some sort of injury. But yeah, Jim was very vague in a timeline, which tells me that the thing with Jim and injuries is he only discloses stuff concretely if it's a long-term deal. So it sounds like it's not going to be huge, a long-term deal, but it does sound like Cade's going to miss probably a few weeks. I'm assuming it's probably a sprain or something to that degree. But yeah, they're going to be without him at least, this Saturday. Obviously, JJ gets to start. That was obviously the plan, but Michigan will have to, if something goes wrong with JJ or whatever the case may be, they're going to have to figure something out with the backup job.
Cade's really taken a few really good shots, and I mean the kind of shots that he just set his feet and got popped.
Yeah, it's weird. Every time he comes into the game, especially the last couple of weeks, he takes a sack or two, and I don't know what the deal is. Michigan, that's probably if there's one glaring weakness I think that we've seen so far in the offense, the issues at times with pass protection. They haven't been stellar at it. I mean, I think they've been fine by and large, but Cade's certainly taken some shots. They've had some leakage there up front. Jim and the coaching staff acknowledged as much after week 2 against Hawaii. So I think that's probably one of the things they're trying to shore up. And to the offensive line, defense, they've been, juggling some injuries and dealing with some shuffling of the line up front there.
Jim said there's going to be competition in practice this week for the backup job behind JJ. So you've got Davis Warren, Alex Orji, and Alan Bowman. And we've only seen glimpses of them in the first 3 games, Aaron. Any of those 3, though, that's made an impression on you?
Well, yeah, I think, all 3 of them really for different reasons. I think Bowman's a solid guy with experience. I mean, he had, I think, 16 starts during his tenure at Texas Tech, put up a lot of passing yards. So the way he's kind of the KG veteran there of the group, he knows what he's doing. I don't think he gets rattled too much. Davis Warren is a very strong arm. We haven't seen a ton of him. But what we have seen is, I think, a kid who can move in the pocket and deliver those passes on time. So I like this. I like what I've seen out of him so far. And Alex Orji seems he's obviously a true freshman, so doesn't have a ton of experience under him. Jim and the coaching staff seem hell bent on getting him into games and kind of getting his feet wet, kind of like what they did with J.J. McCarthy last year, especially in the run game. He has 2 rushing touchdowns now in the first 3 games. And it's funny because we asked Jim after the game, after the injury on Saturday to Cade, about the backup job, and I think all of us assumed it was going to be either Davis or Alan Bowman. And Jim himself kind of threw Alex's name into that bunch. So clearly he likes what he's seen from him so far. I think that backup role is going to be kind of a week-to-week thing, depending on who looks best in practice, and obviously who the opponent will be. But I wouldn't surprise me if either one of those 3 in there, either late in a blowout or if they need someone in there in case of injury or whatever the case may be.
Well, Jim also mentioned that Carson Barnhart, Nakai Hill-Green, and Donovan Edwards were doubtful. Then he sort of backtracked and said, let's say probable for right now until later in the week. But I would think that means none of their injuries are really too serious.
No, it sounds like it's really been a week-to-week thing with all of them. Barnhart was dealing with a sprained ankle, and in fact, he did have his leg in a kind of an air cast a few weeks ago. I saw him walking around, so I think he was kind of a week-to-week thing, depending on feel. Keegan sounds like he's going to play. Jim said probable. He came out of the game. It looked like he took a shot to his arm or hand Saturday. It didn't look too serious. From the sounds of things, he was available to play if they needed him, and obviously they didn't need him, as you guys saw with the game score. So I think once Big Ten schedule ramps up, he'll be ready to go. And then Donovan Edwards is the mystery. He was on the sideline Saturday. He was not in uniform. He looked fine. It sounds like he's been in the weight room and everything else. I'm not sure what the injury is there, but certainly I think he should be back here the next week or 2, I would presume.
Well, this week, Aaron, we're going to learn a lot more about this team on both sides of the ball. Maryland is obviously a step up in competition, and things won't come nearly as easily against the Terrapins. Starting with the offense, JJ is making his second start, and I would think he'll go the distance in this one, and all eyes will certainly be on him, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see what he does against better competition. We've seen him throw the ball around. He's 85% completion percentage through 2 games, which is obviously pretty impressive. But you've also got to consider the competition too. So, yeah, I'm real curious to see what he can do. He looked very good. We kind of know what he can do, and seen it. We know what his ceiling can be and everything else. But I'm ready to see it against some better competition. Some a formidable defense that can actually get some pressure to him and make him move and force him to make more tougher throws. And I think we're going to really see what he can do. And I think that's what this is all part of. This whole quarterback competition, the way it played out was kind of part of that. I think Jim wanted to kind of get his feet wet obviously last year. They got him in this year. Obviously, he played very well against non-conference opponents. Now it's about what he can do in the Big Ten play. If the offensive line can hold up, if they can put together a decent run game, I think it's going to open up things a lot for JJ in the passing game.
Well, the Maryland defense has been really bad for a long time now. I think they've been in the Big Ten for 10 years. It's been bad that long.
Yeah.
So it looks like Michigan, and after watching, I got to see their game, the Maryland SMU game on Saturday night. It looks like Michigan should be able to have success on the ground and through the air against these guys, Aaron.
I do think so. And whether Donovan plays or not, I think it'll be a big factor in the run game. I mean, Blake's going to get his share of carries, and I think you obviously see CJ Stokes. But I think this is going to be an opportunity for Michigan to really show us what they have in the passing game. We heard all off season about how they had 4 and 5 starters at receiver. Jim really liked the group. He's called it one of the best he's had since he's been here at Michigan, which is saying quite a bit considering they've had some pretty good players at that position, over the last couple of years. So I'm really curious. I want to see them throw the ball around, see what they can do, get downfield, get those chunk plays that maybe we didn't see a ton of last year, and try and open this thing up. We've seen bits and pieces of that this year. They've really gotten Roman Wilson going at receiver. He's played really well. He's had some big chunk plays. Ronnie Bell's been off to a good start, kind of picked up where he left off after the injury. Cornelius Johnson's the guy that hasn't had a great start so far. He's been flagged a couple of times. He's had some drop balls. I think it's time for him to get going, and we just haven't seen a ton of Angelo Anthony either. So I think this is an opportunity for them to get it going. I think, you mentioned Maryland's defense isn't great. They're going to give up some points. I expect there'll be a lot of points scored in this game between both teams. But Michigan's passing game is going to have an opportunity to show what they're really made of. And it's time to let the ball fly around.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see the passing game open up. But when I watched that SMU game on Saturday night, SMU controlled the clock by just pounding the football. They really had the running game going. So you would think, Jim being Jim, seeing that on tape, that he would like to run the football. And, so far, the running game, Blake Corum's done a great job. He has not been really explosive, but he has been the workhorse, and he will be Saturday. As I said, he's been running very hard between the tackles so far, but we really haven't seen him break any big ones yet, have we?
No, we haven't. I've been real curious. I think they're utilizing him a little bit different this year. He put on 10 or 15 pounds in the offseason. He bulked up. He almost looks like a fullback, almost the way he's looking. And I think the way they're kind of using him. I mean, you saw it Saturday against UConn. They wanted to use him around the line of scrimmage. He was very effective in that way. But he hasn't broken a ton of big tackle or a bunch of big runs yet, as we've seen in previous years. I think we'll kind of wait to see that. And it would not surprise me if Michigan comes out of the gate Saturday running the football to try and control clock and everything else. That's been Jim's MO now for a long time. We saw it quite a bit last year. And it's one way to keep the ball out of Maryland's hands. And I think that's their strength of their team is that offense and their playmakers. And the longer, obviously, Michigan holds on to the ball, the better. It was, the game plan they used very effectively last year. I expect them to start like that on Saturday.
Yeah, if Michigan comes out and pounds the ball at them and has success, that then opens up the passing game that we want to see.
Exactly. I think with JJ in there too, we've talked about this, ad nauseum, I feel like the last few months, but it just adds a different dimension to this offense. Whereas last year, Michigan was very content running the football, controlling the line of scrimmage, eating away at time of possession and eating away at the clock and the like, and they can still do that. But with JJ, it's just, it adds a different dimension. He's able to get outside the pocket, throw the ball, and get those chunk plays that we didn't see a ton of last year. So I think Michigan looks at it with a two-pronged thing here. Where they can run the ball. Now they don't have Hassan Haskins, someone who's proven that he can do it between the lines of scrimmage and get those yards after contact. But I think they're content with Blake Corum. They like what they have there. Donovan Edwards, I think they like, but again, his status for Saturday is up in the air, and they're still trying to get C.J. Stokes involved. But the opportunity is there for them to, I think, dominate this game. In both facets of the offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned with Edwards being out, we're going to see C.J. Stokes as the second back in that rotation. I like what I've seen from him so far. What do you think?
I do too, and Jim really likes him. It was real apparent when they recruited him this past year and brought him on. Jim couldn't say enough good things about him. He really kind of taken a liking to him. You could tell that I think they realized they kind of found a diamond in the rough from a talent perspective. And he's kind of lived up to their expectations. I mean, he came in right away and looked good in practice, where they felt comfortable giving him, some snaps here in the first, few games. It sounds like he's kind of worked his way up to the number 3 role of the depth chart running back. We've seen him, get some snaps here. He's broken off some big runs. I think he adds a lot. I think they like what they see. Obviously, he's still a freshman, so he's still got some learning and everything else. He's going to make mistakes. But I think Michigan's found their number 3 back and potential back of the future. I think he can do everything. He can run between the tackles. He can get outside. He can pass protect and catch the football. There's a lot to like about C.J. Stokes. I think a year or two from now, there's potential there where he can be that diamond in the rough in the Big Ten, that Hassan Haskins type guy who was, a 3-star recruit, didn't get recruited by some of the bigger programs, and yet Michigan, has the resources to kind of develop him and turn him into, a potential 1,000-yard back. It would not surprise me a couple years from now if that's the case.
No, I agree with you. I like everything about how the kid runs. I didn't, when I looked at the stat sheet or the size and weights when he came in, I thought, ooh, got a little one here. Maybe they'll use him as a scat back, slot him out, whatever. But the kid does run well. He has run well, I should say, between the tackles. But Mike Hart mentioned this. What I've noticed and what I really like in any running back is the kid, even when he gets hit at the line of scrimmage, he falls forward for 2 or 3 yards.
Yeah, and that was something I think Michigan was really trying to nail into the running back the last few years. And I think it really came to home last year when you saw Hassan Haskins have that type of impact. That was one of the things Jay Harbaugh and Mike Hart, Jay Harbaugh, former Michigan running backs coach, obviously, they all talked about his ability to get yards after contact and turn a 3 and 4 yard run into maybe a 6 or 7 yard run, or a 1 yard pickup into 3 or 4, and just continue to add, pick up those added extra yards, because that matters. Those matter. Those that's a difference between a third short and a first down. And I think that's something they've been hammering home the running backs now for years. And I think picked that up nicely. And the more you do that, I think the more you're going to see the field, especially with this coaching staff.
Well, Aaron, we've heard a lot of talk about the talent and the depth in the receiver room all summer. And we have seen so many of them in the first 3 weeks. But I would think with Big Ten play beginning on Saturday, we're going to see more of a set rotation. Maybe not, but I would think we are, if for no other reason than to get 3 or 4 guys into a rhythm with JJ, because that is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think you need, a reliable crop of weapons, some guys you can lean on, option, it's one thing to have multiple receivers, guys that can go outside and, you can say you can lean on, but I think a quarterback wants to get into rhythm. They want to have options that guys are comfortable with, guys they know they're going to run the correct routes. Guys are going to get open for them, and I think in a way that's kind of what they found early on. As I mentioned, they had 3 guys they've leaned on. Jim, came into the year, saying that they had 4 or 5, but I truly think there's probably 3 here, and that's fine. Last year was basically 1 or 2 in any given game, and that's why you saw the passing game struggle so much. I think, opposing defenses were honing in on the number 1 guy, in that case last year, Cornelius Johnson. This year, Ronnie Bell's back, so he becomes kind of the default number 1, which I think opens things up. And I think you've seen Roman Wilson really take advantage of that this year. Michigan's kind of schemed him up and dialed him up for some big plays and screen passes and the like. And they go out for chunk plays, and they really made a difference in this passing game, something that we didn't see a ton last year.
Well, let's talk about that offensive line for just a minute or so, Aaron. And we sort of touched on this earlier, but they've been good so far. I don't think they've been great yet, but they've been good. Injuries have been a factor. You've been shuttling some guys around. I think the run blocking has been really sharp. But the one thing that, we talked about a bit earlier is we've got to clean up that pass block protection, don't we?
Yeah, it could be a result of the shuffling, and that's something you don't really want to do with an offensive line too much because the guys up front are so dependent on learning to block next to the same guy every game. We talk about that, and I think that's one of the reasons why Michigan's offensive line was so effective last year. They're experienced, they were a healthy group. They were playing with each other. They had played with each other for a couple of years now, so they kind of knew what was going on. Yes, they do have a couple of returning guys from that line last year, but they've also added a couple new pieces. Throw in those new pieces, and then you deal with these injuries that guys have been kind of coming in and out. It makes it difficult at times. So I think once they get their feet underneath them and get some more play, I think they'll be okay. But yeah, run blocking has been pretty good. It hasn't been much of an issue, but again, you got to consider the competition they've gone up against. They really like what Oluwatimi's brought at center. They like his leadership and I think his brute physicality. Jim Harbaugh's mentioned that a couple of times now. He's a very physical player, which maybe is a little bit different from what we saw from Andrew Bastardas last year. But yeah, they just got to get healthy. It sounds like Trevor Keegan's going to be available and probably will play on Saturday, which is a good thing. That kind of keeps things in check there on the left side. And then I think they would prefer having Carson Barnhart back. While he isn't a starter, they look at him as kind of the next guard or tackle up, so to speak. And I think once they get those guys healthy and get that depth back, I think they'll be feeling pretty good. They like what they've seen out of Giovanni Ohadi. He's kind of come in the last couple of weeks, given the injuries and played left guard, but he's still young, and I think he's still trying to get his feet underneath him. So I think that the quicker they get healthier, the better, I think, for everyone involved. But I think if you're looking for a shining light here, the fact that they've been dealing with the injuries and shuffling during the non-conference schedule, and not during the heart of the Big Ten schedule, is probably a good thing. So they just got to get healthy, and if they can do that, I think they'll be in good shape.
Well, Aaron, as good as the defense has looked so far, we still don't know just how good they are. Talia Tagovailoa is a next-level quarterback. There's no question about that. And his receiving core, they're tall, they're fast. They've got some NFL-caliber guys there. They sent 2 guys, I think, from last year's team to the NFL. This is a serious passing attack.
Yeah, Maryland depends on their skilled players, and they're very good there. I mean, this is Michael Oxley's recruited very well the last couple of years. Folks may not realize that, but Maryland's 2021 recruiting class was, I think, top 30 in the country. This year they were top 40. So they've done a very good job of bringing in some of those skilled guys at receiver and running back, and obviously Tolly at quarterback. They can move the football. They can score points. They can score in bunches. And as I mentioned earlier, the name of the game here might be keeping the ball out of Maryland's hands as long as possible. Now, that being said, when they do have the ball, Michigan, this is going to be an offense that Michigan has not faced all year long, so far this year. They have had to go up against some air raids and some teams that want to move the football but haven't been able to do so. But I think the talent level here is just vastly different. So I'm really curious to see how this Michigan defense reacts and responds. I'm sure Maryland's going to get some points on the board. There's no doubt about that. But I think the name of the game here is to keep the ball at the end zone, turning maybe some of those long drives, forcing Maryland to kick field goals as opposed to touchdowns. I think red zone defense is very, very important here. I'm really curious how the secondary holds up. I thought this was a strength of the Michigan defense coming into this year. They're very deep in the back end. I think they've got some talent back there, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to kind of reinforce that idea. Because while they've looked pretty good the first 3 games, as we talked about, Maryland's a completely different beast.
They are, and they're not a one-trick pony. They are very talented at the receiver positions and, of course, at quarterback, but they can also run the ball. They sent, I can't think of the name of the kid who played tailback last year for them. He's in the NFL now, and another aspect of this offense is that run. They have a really good-looking young running back, Roman Hemby, who has size. He has game-breaker speed. So this could be a much more balanced Maryland attack, and it's going to be a legitimate test at every level as far as stressing that defense.
Yeah, in years past, it almost seemed like Maryland was relying exclusively on the passing game. And as you mentioned, the fact that they do have a legitimate run game, it opens things up for them. It opens things up in all aspects. I think it forces opponents and defenses to guess a little bit more than maybe they had in the past. And it takes the stress off the passing game. So I do think Maryland's this is a better Maryland team than we have seen in years past. Maybe even the years where they've started 4 or 5-0 and struggled after that. So I think Michigan's got their hands full this week. I do think they win. They might win by a couple of possessions, but Maryland's they're gonna put up a fight. They're gonna move the football. They're gonna score some points. There's no doubt about it. And I think how Michigan responds, I think it's gonna give us a better idea of what this defense really is. Because we've seen a lot of guys play the first 3 weeks. We've seen a lot of shuffling. We've seen a lot of things happen. Part of it is obviously just to get some of those younger guys in, and they're dealing with blowouts and the like. But now I think crunch time is here. This will be a little bit more competitive. They're gonna be tested for the first time all season, and how they respond, I think, is going to it's going to tell us a lot. It's not going to tell us everything. It's not going to write their entire story, but it's going to give us a data point, and I think the first real data point we've had all year.
Oh, absolutely. And I know a lot of Michigan fans I've talked to this week are, for whatever reason, of the mindset that Maryland is not a good team and that we're going to roll them. And I think we're basing that, or a lot of fans are, off of what they've seen in the first 3 games for Michigan. So it might happen. But, circling back to my first question and what you just talked about is, how good is Michigan? And until we see them actually do it against a team like Maryland, we don't have those answers.
No, I think they're good. It's just a matter of how good. They brought a lot of pieces back from last year, and as we saw, they won the Big Ten championship. They got to the playoffs. So I think this team is good. Are they the number 4 team in the country? Good. I don't know. Usually by now we've had at least one relatively, competitive test, something they kind of gauge. Like last year it was the Washington game, and they won that pretty handedly. And it's like, okay, maybe this team is good. This year, we don't know. We thought they had a light non-conference schedule. They ran through their 3 opponents, which is what a good team should do. So you got to give them credit for that. They kind of did. They lived up to expectations. You can make the case they exceeded expectations. But how do they respond when they take that first punch? I'm not saying that may happen on Saturday against Maryland, but it's going to come at some point. And I think you saw the Michigan team last year do that. The second half against Wisconsin, you saw them respond at Nebraska. They had those situations where they were on the ropes there, potentially losing a game, and they responded and ended up pulling out a victory. I don't know if that's going to happen Saturday, but it's going to come at some point. And how they respond, I think, is going to tell us a lot of whether this team is another Big Ten title-worthy team.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Aaron. Quite a few Big Ten teams have struggled in the first 3 weeks, as we've seen. As we've talked about here today, Michigan has looked good. Penn State really looked good against Auburn there on Saturday. Minnesota has surprised many. I think they're up there near the top in offense and defense nationally. Ohio State looks like Ohio State, uber good again. And Wisconsin looks like they might be coming around, and things can change. But right now, those teams I mentioned look like the best in the Big Ten so far, don't they?
Yeah, Ohio State's offense is next level as we expected. Their defense, I think, still has some holes there. I'm really curious. I think they can be had against the right offense. But yeah, right now Ohio State, I think, is leader of the pack. I don't think Michigan's far behind, just based on what we saw last year and the results so far. Penn State's been kind of a surprise. I think some folks expected them to have a down year, and they've done pretty well so far. That win at Auburn, it's not easy to go down to Auburn and win, no matter how good or bad Auburn is. That's an impressive road victory. So Penn State, and they've got the defense too. So I think Penn State's going to be very competitive. The Big Ten East is going to be fascinating to watch the play out. I do expect Michigan State to get better as the season goes along. I'm not saying they're going to have a shot to win the division, but they'll be competitive. And in the West, the West is gosh. I think there were some folks that really thought Nebraska was going to do something this year. We've seen that they're not. Wisconsin is Wisconsin. They did lose a home game to Washington State a couple of weeks ago, so I don't think they're the caliber they were a couple of years back. So I think the West is wide open. I do think Minnesota has a chance there, but again, just like Michigan, they played a relatively weak non-conference schedule, so I don't know how good they really are either. Plus, they just lost one of their top receivers. So East is competitive. I think the West is wide open. Yeah, it's going to be a fun conference schedule. I'm ready to get going and actually see some real competitive football games.
It really is. And you mentioned Ohio State looks like they might be able to be had by the right kind of an offense because, matchups are everything. And Wisconsin, even though they might not be the Wisconsin of a few years ago, they're going to come into Columbus and they're going to run the football or want to run the football. And I think this could be a really good test. We're going to learn a lot more about that Ohio State front, especially in that game.
Yeah. If Wisconsin can be effective running the football, and as we talked about earlier, take the ball out of the offense's hands, I think you can keep it close to Ohio State. It takes the right game plan and executing it to do it. We'll see. If Wisconsin can get the run game going, it could be close. They struggle early on. It could be a long day for them. Ohio State just got so much firepower offensively. We talk about the Michigan offense, but Ohio State just put up 77 on Toledo. So it's Ohio State's they're impressive. I'm real impressive. I think if they could just get gradually better defensively, they probably will win the Big Ten. I do think Michigan's going to be around their coattails. I think Penn State's going to be there as well. So the Big Ten East is going to be fascinating. The 3 or 4 teams that are in the mix, all of them I think have an opportunity with the right victories and everything else. But it should be a fun year.
It should be a fun year. Can't wait to get it started on Saturday. And it's also been fun having Michigan beat writer Aaron McMann from MLive join us again. Aaron, you're always gracious with your time. You're a great guest, and we look forward to our next visit.
Always, Mike. Thanks.
On Quick Hits today, updating injury news. Jim says that Donovan Edwards is doing good, but won't play. Cade McNamara, no timetable for his return. Trevor Keegan is probable. Carson Barnhart, we'll see. Other than those guys, we're in good shape for Saturday's game. Here are a few game day notes of interest. We lead the series with Maryland 9-1. We won the first meeting 20-0 on September 28, 1985, right here in Ann Arbor. Last year, we went to College Park and came home with a 59-18 win on November 20th. Mike Loxley is in his 4th year as head man at Maryland. His record is 15-18. Last year, the Terps were 3-6 in the Big Ten, 7-6 overall. They returned 6 starters on offense and 5 on defense. They played in the Pinstripe Bowl last year and pounded Virginia Tech 54-10. The weatherman says that, as of now, and we know how this can change in Michigan, it's going to be partly cloudy on Saturday, with highs reaching the mid-60s. Chance of rain, 10%. So if that forecast holds up, pretty much a perfect football Saturday. Next week we head to Iowa for a date with the Hawkeyes. It's a noon kickoff. My guest on Tuesday's show will be Iowa radio play-by-play voice Gary Dolphin. Then on Thursday we'll hear from Michigan beat writer Michael Cohen from the Detroit Free Press. So make sure you tune in again next week. Saturday should be fun. I'm looking forward to a challenge for Maryland. I know you are too, and how we react to that challenge. I have no idea how good we are, and we might not know more after Saturday's game, but it is going to be interesting to see because this is a real step up in competition. That will do it for another show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat Maryland. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!